Welcome to Ocean Ideas, the official podcast of the Ocean Lovers Festival, where we dive into big blue thinking and celebrate the people driving ocean innovation and conservation. In this episode, we explore how citizen science is transforming ocean protection, from Sydney's coast to coral reefs worldwide. Host Duncan is joined by Andy Ridley, Sarah Handebo, and Thomas Masaglio to share how everyday ocean lovers can join the rescue mission for our blue planet.
We are going to be hearing about how you can join the rescue and share citizen science for all to help protect Sydney's coast as well as the world's ocean. So we're hearing from conservationists and scientists who are going to share their game-changing work to harness people power and drive success. And to host this session, I'm delighted to introduce Duncan Hewer from the Underwater Research Group. Please join me in welcoming Duncan as our host.
Thank you. And let me introduce our panel, because they're the ones that we want to hear from today. So on the far side there, we've got Andy Ridley. He's the CEO and co-founder of Citizens of the Reef, as well as Earth Hour. He combines leadership, science, and AI to drive conservation movements and take action and drive global environmental solutions. Next up, we've got Sarah over there. Sarah actually is on the committee with me at Underwater Research Group of New South Wales. This is one of the oldest running dive clubs in Sydney, and it's all centred around getting divers involved in citizen science projects. She also founded Saving Norman with me and currently is managing Spotter Shark, which we'll hear about today. And then up next, we got Thomas Masaglio. So Thomas Masaglio, he's a PhD student at UNSW. He's an avid beachcomber, botanist, and naturalist, and is involved in the organisation of a lot of the BioBlitzes around Sydney. He's also co-writing a book that we'll ask you about in a bit. And he's also the admin of iNaturalist. So I'll start off with you, Thomas. When I first saw the word naturalist in your bio, I had a bit of a giggle. But then I realised you probably weren't talking about that. What is a naturalist, and can you tell us also a bit about your work?
Yeah, so a little bit different from a naturist, although some people can be both. So a naturalist is, if you think back to the classic Victorian era of people like Charles Darwin, the classic English gentility class that would go out and you're basically making observations of biodiversity and nature around you. So really taking the time to stop and look and listen and record. So I think a big part of being a naturalist for me is curiosity and just being interested in biodiversity in general, and just wanting to go out there and find and be as interested in as many different living organisms around us as we possibly can.
Awesome. Again, can you tell us a bit about the work you're doing at UNSW?
Yeah, so I'm a slight imposter here. I'm actually a botanist. That's my PhD. But I've dabbled in a lot of marine science. So some of my research at UNSW, I actually worked on goose barnacles, for example. So the barnacles that you find attached to logs washed up on the shore after big storms. And we looked at how you can use those in marine forensics. And then more recently, we're working on a book at the moment to every single known fish species from Sydney Harbour, which should be hopefully coming out in a month or two. So that's one to keep an eye out for.
Awesome. So Sarah's, I don't know if you've seen out on the bank there, she's running a stand for Spotter Shark. So Sarah, tell us a bit about Spotter Shark and what that's all about.
Great, thank you. So Spotter Shark is a way for people to share their photos of grey nurse sharks. We're focused just on the critically endangered grey nurse shark of the east coast and west coast of Australia. They are a gorgeous shark. If you've ever dived with one and been lucky enough, like we have many times, they are really docile. They look like a big scary shark, but they're not. They're actually very cute. And what we do at Spotter Shark is we collect the photos that people have taken, so completely non-invasive, no tagging necessary, and just from that photo there's a unique spot pattern on the sides, and Spotter Shark has got some technology assisted with artificial intelligence where we can run through 16,000 images and find the match. So we can work out that you just were diving with Erica or you were diving with Max the shark. And that over time helps us understand how many sharks there are. We work with scientists to use that data to do big data analysis on how where they go, why they go, who do they hang out with, what's their health, how long do they live, all these sorts of questions, which is really exciting. And anybody can get involved. We also don't just share with scientists. We try and, I guess a big part of it is the fun. A big part of Spot a Shark is trying to give each shark a name and a personality. You're far more likely to protect something that you want to go and help Norman the shark, but you might not care about Carcharius taurus. Yeah, that's a big part of it too, is community and trying to drive a bit of love for the sharks.
You mentioned there that the software you use uses AI to help scan the images and help that, and I know this is a topic that's of interest to Andy. Do you want to take over there and talk about the work you guys are doing and how AI relates to that?
Yeah, I'm Dan from Cairns and work on the Great Barrier, primarily on the Great Barrier Reef at the moment. And we have a very large citizen science project of which the objective is to try and identify the most important reefs on the Great Barrier Reef, so what they call key source reefs. The traditional owners call them mother reefs. So these are the ones that reboot the reefs around them every year when there's a spawning. And we did this by, the Great Barrier Reef's massive, same size as Germany, or if you think about it, if you put it against the west side of the US, it would go from above the border with Canada to below the border with Mexico. So it took in an incredibly large area. So we've built this kind of motley flotilla of all sorts of different boats, dive boats, tugs, recreational fishing boats, all sorts of boats, and they go out, capture photographs, and from those we use AI linked with lots and lots, thousands of people all over the world to help us identify those key source reefs. So that's one of the AI side of what we do anyway, yeah.
I want to throw this to anyone in the panel, but how do people sit here and look at the work you guys are doing and say that, oh, I don't have the time for that? Can you give us examples of ways that just anybody can get involved and contribute to these initiatives?
Yeah, so with that census project, actually Sarah just asked me, like, what do you think about restoration of reefs? Actually, one of the biggest things at the moment is we have to identify the most important ones to look after. So better stewardship, where you remove pests like crown of thorns, starfish and stuff like that. So actually the biggest thing with the role of citizens, and particularly with AI, is the role of citizens has gone from sometimes what was a little bit of a kind of marketing gadget to get people involved, or an awareness gadget. It's all really important things, to actually now the citizen scientists have become incredibly useful. And the way that our work is, when us citizen scientists, when helped with AI, is now as good as an expert at identifying what's in a picture. So that's really helpful, because what we really need is massive scale-up of conservation efforts, and there is no money. And if you think about what's happened the last 6-8 weeks with USAID being pulled out of many conservation projects and many other really important projects all over the world, the money's going down dramatically, not up. So you think about what are we going to do about it, and the role of the citizen now becomes critically important. So that's the way that we've been building what we're doing and why we think it's important. And in terms of what we need people to do, we designed everything to be, if you're commuting on your bus, you can actually help us you can analyze images on your phone. So you can do cat meme, bit of analysis on an image, then go back to your cat memes. So that's how we think of it. It's like a way of preventing your Trump doom scrolling, if you're interested in doing that.
Sarah, it looked like you also had wanted to add there.
I just thought that was really funny about the cat memes. Sorry, yeah, I think anyone can get involved, and it really can be as simple as spreading the word. I do think the awareness piece is, you can never say it enough. That is a really important part. I do think it does take time if you want to, in Spot a Shark, for example, it does require a bit more time, because to analyse each photo, we do have AI, but it's not always perfect. It still requires, a human eye is still better than an AI in our world, for sure. Yeah. But you can get involved by just sharing the word. And I would also say, if you people who have dived, help me out, rather than sending me a GoPro image, a GoPro footage that's a video that's 2 hours long. Help me by maybe going through that video and capturing the bits where I can see the shark. That would be really helpful. But that's just on the Spot a Shark stuff. There's so many other ways that you can get involved in citizen science that's beyond my Spot a Shark role. So, for example, every year in Sydney, we run a sea slug census. And sea slugs are gorgeous. They're like these little aliens in the sea, so colourful. I can see people nodding. They're awesome to take photos of as well if you are a photographer, because they sit fairly still. So you can get some beautiful photos. And with the sea slug sensors, it's as simple as going and having fun on your Sunday, uploading your photos to iNaturalist, done. You've just contributed to citizen science.
Yeah, that's a good segue for Thomas. When we spoke earlier, you spoke about the importance of photography, and you mentioned something interesting, which is don't let your photos grow digital dust. And you also spoke about secondary photo evidence. Do you want to speak a bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm heavily involved with iNaturalist, and I think one of the most fantastic things about the platform is that it doesn't matter your qualifications, what level of knowledge you have. Every single person in this room right now can make meaningful contributions to our understanding of the natural world. And the best part is you don't even have to realize that you are making those contributions. So there's many stories like this, but I thought a very cool one to discuss would be a recent one where many of you would have heard of polychaetes. They're these marine worms. There are thousands and thousands of species. And there was one particular polychaete that was described from Japan way back in the 1950s. And then it hadn't been seen in more than 70 years, which wasn't too surprising because it's about a few millimeters long, it's transparent, it's not exactly the koala of the seas. So it's a pretty innocuous looking little worm that's probably not on the radar of most people. But there was a researcher in Japan going through some Gorgonian coral samples. So Gorgonian corals, for anyone who doesn't know about them, these spectacular, often fan-shaped corals. You often get them in deep sea waters. And she was going through these coral samples and was finding some little worms. And she thought they might have been this worm that they hadn't seen in 70 years. And then when she was looking at these more, she realized that she often saw pygmy seahorses on the same corals. And so these researchers went on to iNaturalist, and there are thousands and thousands of photographs of pygmy seahorses because they're a fantastic fish that lots of citizen scientists like to photograph. And it turns out in about 500 photos of these pygmy seahorses, the worms are actually in the background on the Gorgonian corals. So 99% of the people that were uploading these photos of the pygmy seahorses had no idea that they were photographing the worms as well. They hadn't even noticed them in the photos. But they were there, sitting on the Gorgonian corals, and sometimes even sitting on the seahorses themselves in the photos. And so they were actually able to publish this paper with, as I said, more than 500 images from iNaturalist, all contributed by citizen scientists. We now have this huge amount of extra information on where this worm occurs, water depths, other species it's associated with, and all of it was completely incidental. So if you're just curious, you're going out there, you're taking photos, it doesn't matter if it's of the most common species out on the reef or in the ocean, you just don't know 5, 10, 15 years down the track what value that data might have. But as Duncan mentioned, if your photos are just sitting there on your hard drive or your computer accumulating digital dust for 15 or 20 years, they may as well not exist. So the most important step is to actually get them out there onto a public platform like iNaturalist, and then it opens the opportunity for the many researchers looking at those photos to hopefully serendipitously stumble upon something amazing.
We actually accidentally had a similar experience. We uploaded a picture of a pipe horse that I just thought was drab and uninteresting, but for some reason shared on social media. And then suddenly guys from the Australian Museum got in touch with us, and they were actually busy researching a new species. And that was the first time that one was ever photographed on a particular type of sponge. So that was a bit of exciting news and just shows what you can do just by putting a photograph out there. Andy, what are some of the challenges that you found getting either funding or participation and getting these movements to the size and scale that you have?
I think the biggest challenge with citizen science has been skepticism around citizen science. And I think one of the biggest things for us at Citizens of the Reef has been, we work with UQ and with JCU universities and some others as well, but the biggest thing for us is trying to build the credibility around the analysis that's coming off the images that are captured by hundreds of people on the Great Barrier Reef and then analysed by thousands all over the world. So I think that's really, there is skepticism within the research community, and I think that's been one of the biggest problems we've had. But we've dealt with that, and as I said, the AI mixed with the human eye is where you start to get super accuracy, because AI is still not good enough to be able to analyze images to the extent that we want them to your point. But when you add the human eye in there as well, it's actually extraordinarily accurate. So yeah, I think that's been the one, and AI has revolutionized what we've been doing in the last 3 years, and not to replace humans, but to make them way more useful, I guess.
I'm going to throw it over to the audience. Does anyone have any questions for any of the panelists?
I guess this is a niche iNaturalist question, but so that's for all of the panelists. So that's about collecting data. Do you have a way for people to use that data to draw trends? Like, I've been looking at, are there penguins in this part of the harbor?
iNaturalist itself is another great way, right? So you can use data directly off iNaturalist. It's completely open and free for anyone to download and use the data at any time. You might also consider platforms like, you're probably familiar with, the Atlas of Living Australia. So for those who don't know it, it's Australia's national biodiversity database, and it's a data aggregator. So the ALA doesn't generate its own data, but it collates data from lots of different sources. So that includes iNaturalist, but then it also includes sources like museum data, Reef Life Survey, lots of other surveys. And so the ALA is often a good central hub to go to find marine data coming in from all kinds of sources and then compiled in a nice central repository for you.
Yeah, I'll answer that as well. So what we've been doing on the Great Barrier Reef, we tried to design it so it can be used anywhere in the world. So it's just the same projects now starting in Hawaii and in the Red Sea, both in Saudi and Egypt side, and in the Coral Triangle, hopefully later this year. So I think basically everything that we build around citizen science, the one kind of really cool thing about open sourcing or APIing all this stuff is the data should be available to everyone if you can make it available. It takes a bit of money to do it well, though. Not loads, but a bit. But the other thing is design everything to be shared so that you can actually build on all this talent and community and the people in the water who want to help and the people who are sitting on the lounge in New York or in Beijing who want to help. And so there's a sort of, I think there's a way of thinking about citizen science where the citizen is at the forefront of it, but now they've suddenly become more and more useful. That's how I think about it at the moment.
I wouldn't mind adding something to this. I think the simplest thing is, in iNaturalist, you've got all of those species. Don't assume. I think that's the number one thing I would say. Don't assume that somebody else is actually looking at those things and doing studies. When I got involved in Spotter Shark, it was because COVID happened. I lived in Bondi. I was very lucky. And so I was free diving in Bondi most days, and we kept coming across grey nurse sharks. And at home, I was looking at my photos, and I started just that curiosity that you were talking about, curiosity. I kept looking at my photos and realising it was the same shark. Or, oh, that was the one that was there last month. Oh, that was the one that was there a few months ago. And I started doing this just with my eyes. And then it was the curiosity that led me to find things on the internet where I found Spotter Shark, and then I contacted them and said, hey, I'm really interested in this. Can I get involved? He said, yeah, here's the keys. Go. And I would say that the software that we use that drives a lot of the AI, it's been built to work with any animal. You just need to train it. As an example, koalas in Australia have got a unique fingerprint on their nose. I don't think anybody at the moment is running a project on koalas to be able to look at all the photos in iNaturalist and work out who they are and how often they're seen. For example, you could go in and just put up your hand. You do need passion, you need the time, but if you wanted to, there's nothing stopping you. Do not assume that somebody else is doing it. And iNaturalist is a wealth of information, but it's only going to be useful if somebody actually takes that data and does something with it. So I really implore anybody who feels apathy in looking at the news and doom strolling and thinking, oh my God, I can't do anything, you actually can.
And there you have it. That's how easy it is to own an animal. Thank you all so much for being on the panel. That's all we have time for today.
Thanks for tuning in to Ocean Ideas, brought to you by the Ocean Lovers Festival, Australia's largest celebration of ocean culture and conservation. If you loved this episode, share it with a fellow ocean lover and explore more at oceanloversfestival.com. You can also follow us on social media for updates on our March 2026 festival, where science meets art, music, and community action. Until next time, stay curious, stay connected, and keep diving in for our blue planet.